So that means, you know, we're almost there. So last time we talked about medicine and religion and kind of how to connect those two things together, right? We talked about, I asked you for examples where medicine and religion might come together. For example, we talked about death, which is, you know, not the most fun topic, but it's an interesting one, right? And I asked you, is death a medical subject, or is death a religious subject? And that's, we actually had some really good conversations based on those kinds of questions, right? Because the reality is it's both, and we can focus on one side or the other side, but to get sort of the full phenomenon of something like death or even health or disease, we have to be able to kind of open up to these different sides. And it ties in, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, I don't think I did. It ties in with this idea of double vision. Do you remember double vision? Maybe I should keep my glasses on. I never know should I wear them or not. We had the rabbit duck head. Do you guys remember that? Here's a particularly weird image I discovered when I was preparing for class. It looks like a real rabbit head, doesn't it? Maybe it's photoshopped. I don't know. So that's pretty weird looking. So what's the point of double vision? You guys remember this thing? What is this supposed to illustrate? Is this a rabbit or a duck? It can be both. Yeah, Jen's got it. So you guys probably all remember this. Maybe you're just being shy and don't want to participate. But let's do it, because today is a day I'm going to get you to participate. As much as I like to hear myself talk, I also like when you guys talk. Different perspectives on something, interpretation. Yeah, those are all very good. And so we could interpret this as a duck. We could interpret this as a rabbit. But to get the full picture, we need to kind of take both perspectives together. Another thing we kind of talked about that's similar is the blind man and the elephant. You guys remember that? The blind men hold one piece of the elephant and they say it represents the whole thing. But of course, that means they are blind to the other pieces. They don't see the other pieces. So, you know, then it would be even more than just double vision, right? We're taking on multiple perspectives. And this might feel like, okay, whatever, who cares? But it's actually it's kind of a big deal to be able to do this. Most of the time we don't. And I think particularly in like America today, a lot of our conversations come down to like, are you on my side, or are you with me, or are you against me, right? I think that's sort of chilled out a little bit since like January, but again, January wasn't that long ago. And I think there's something still sort of like this brewing under the surface, perhaps. So anyways, when we take this perspective in this book, interesting things start to happen. We can see from these two different cultures, from these two different sides, and we can also see them clash, right, and sort of crash into each other. So hopefully that's pretty clear. Questions about that before we move on? This is, of course, it's the whole theme of the book. So we'll keep thinking about this multiple perspective thing as we keep going. We talked about language barriers last time, right? We talked about cultural barriers. And I think this is where we ended, kind of looking at examples of cultural barriers in medicine. And just to summarize those, I put different ways of thinking about health and disease to sort of summarize what we went over last time. Can you think of cultural barriers? Can you think of examples of this where different cultures might have different ideas about health and disease? And it doesn't have to be from the book. It could be. I give you a page number where you can find some, and we can look at that again if you'd like to. But what do you think? What comes to mind? This idea of a cultural barrier in medicine. Do we have those in America today? Probably. But again, it's hard to do, right? Because what this is asking you to do is step beyond your own culture and try to imagine another culture, another way of being. And so unless you have already done that before, it's actually pretty hard to think of examples of this. Some are pro medicine, some against. Yeah, who is against medicine, Jen? Who is against medicine? And what kinds of medicine are they against? It's true. This is a topic that people argue about in America. And it's worth thinking about why. A lot of the time we brush people off who don't agree with us, and maybe there's a good reason for that. It's because they're clearly not as smart as we are, right? And that's why they don't agree with us. But one, I think, powerful thing about this book is it encourages us to see, again, from these two different sides. So what are you thinking about, Jen? What are some examples of people being against medicine? As you are thinking, because I imagine you're probably typing right now, I can point us to examples from the book. Okay, Jehovah's Witnesses, I think. Yeah, that is a thing. That's true. Maybe, should we do it this way? I'm tempted to skip ahead to this government property thing. Why don't we do it? So here on page 80, there's talk about Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, about blood, exactly. And so that's what they talk about on page 80 too. So let's see. Page 80 at the top. The fact that Leah's parents, and of course that's the Lee family, refused to give her medication, at least in part because of cultural or religious reasons, would probably have would have cut little ice in court, even if the Lees had been savvy enough to try and defend their actions. If a child had not been involved, things would have been different. In cases involving competent adults, and this is the part that Jen was talking about, the principle of autonomy almost always takes legal precedent over the principle of beneficence, which means, for example, a Jehovah's Witness, and this is the example that Jen said, has a right to refuse blood transfusion, or a Christian Scientist a course of chemotherapy, even if he or she dies as a result. So maybe we can pause there for a second. So let's say I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I don't want a blood transfusion. It is my right to deny that medical care. If I'm a competent adult, right, I can make that decision for myself. Another thing, what I'm thinking about, because again, I was listening to a podcast about this. Maybe I'll send it to you guys. This American Life. Have I told you guys about this before? It's another podcast. The most recent episode is about things related to what we're discussing. The herd, what happens when our own community suddenly turns on you. So this in particular is about vaccine hesitancy, particularly in Republican groups, and it's interviewing those people. And you really do get both sides. I think good storytelling often does involve kind of both sides of a conflict. So anyways, you can check that out if you're interested. So maybe I will turn this into a question. Do you think the government will force people to get vaccinated? Because now, as an adult, you can say, no, not for me, right? You have a choice at this point. Do you think that will change? Do you think the government will start to force people to get vaccinated? Yes, but indirectly. Okay. How indirectly, Joseph? Federally, state government. Okay. How can we indirectly force people to get vaccinated?
Okay, for example, for those who have children, if they said if you don't get vaccinated or you don't get your children vaccinated, you cannot take them to school, and we need to go to work, we need to do stuff. So they will not tell you you have to do it, but they tell you if you don't do it, then the kid cannot go to school. You have to take care of them, online, or by any other way. So you won't have any other choice.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to get them vaccinated, and you're gonna have to get yourself vaccinated to be able to get around.
that's right. Exactly. Yeah. And, that's the case before this year, too, right? If you want to travel internationally, for example, you need to get several different vaccines. And that's not from the American government, that's from whatever government you are traveling to go visit, right? So governments have requirements. If you want to enter this country, you need certain vaccinations. Some places will only allow people who are vaccinated. Exactly. So we'll have things like Drissa was saying, we'll have different schools, places of work. I don't know if it's been decided yet, but my guess is if you want to come and be an in-person student in the fall, you will probably need to be vaccinated. Don't you guys think? Seems likely. And so, yeah, to be involved in these smaller groups, just like we're saying, like Leo was saying, the state or even smaller than that, institutions, and this comes back to Drissa's point about indirectly, we will all have to get vaccinated at some point. So it's sort of an interesting issue, right? If we are an adult, we can choose to have a religious exemption. Those are the few people who will be allowed to say no to this. And again, I think we haven't seen these cases come up yet, but there are, for religious reasons, you can choose not to get certain vaccines. You probably would not be, I don't know the real details of this. You probably would not be allowed to travel internationally, but maybe you would be allowed to go to school. But then the school has to be very careful with students like this who have not gotten all their vaccinations. So there is a certain amount of space for religious exemptions against these laws, and they're usually the groups that we were talking about earlier, like Jen was talking about, Jehovah's Witnesses, or as we read on this page, Christian Scientists too. They also might look for religious exemptions, and for an adult, that's fine. But the reason I have this court justice here, right, from the Supreme Court, he died in the 50s. You can see his dates here. But he, in 1943, made this pronouncement that I'll read to you guys now. Where is it? With a minor, the state has the right, indeed the obligation, to force the parent to comply with life-saving treatment, even if it is forbidden by the family's religion. And here's the quote: parents may be free to become martyrs themselves, wrote Justice Robert Jackson in a 1943 Supreme Court decision, but it does not follow that they are free in identical circumstances to make martyrs of their children. What's a martyr? Why is he talking about martyrs? Someone who dies for their religion? Yeah, exactly. And you can use this sort of creatively, but he's really talking about religion, isn't he? Right? So somebody who says, I'm not going to get chemotherapy, I'm not going to get insulin or whatever, I'm not going to take whatever treatment that might save my life for religious reasons. This government official is calling that person a martyr, which is an interesting choice of words. It feels a little dramatic. But it's kind of true, right? You'd be dying for your religion, so it sort of makes sense. But if we look at the details of this decision, things get really complicated really quickly, right? In the footnote at the bottom there, you can see more. So again, page 80 for everybody who's following along. Maybe I can just summarize this without reading it. Let's see. Yeah, I'll just try to summarize it. So I'll ask you guys, and you can be the court. So we have a family. Maybe I'll even draw it. This will be the easiest way. So we've got two parents, mom and dad. So this is dad. This is mom. They have a baby. Baby has diabetes. So what medicine does baby need in order to survive? What medicine do you need if you have diabetes? People talk about this now because it's become very expensive in recent months. Insulin, yes, you guys know. So yeah, the baby needs insulin. Mom and dad split up. So let's just draw a line between them. Baby stays with mom. Mom becomes Christian Scientist. And stops giving insulin to her child. The father sues. Well, I guess first let's say the baby dies. The father sues his ex-wife. Who do you think should win? Who wins this case? Because again, there are two things we're thinking about here, right? You have, let's just call it the religious freedom of the United States, right? Your First Amendment right to practice religion. That's on the one hand. She's practicing Christian Science. According to Christian Science, there is this space for religious exemption. But on the other hand, we're also talking about a child, right? And what we could call child abuse and taking care of a child. Just says the dad should win, the dad, and Christian says the dad because the baby cannot say if they want to stop receiving insulin or not. Yeah. You guys all agree the dad should win this case? I think most of us would agree. And that is what happened. So the boy's father, well, I guess I'll say this first. Yeah, Christian Scientist practitioners prayed for him instead of administering insulin. So it's not to say they didn't do anything, right? It's not like the mom, let's, and maybe I'll write this out. Let's assume that the mom loved and cared for the child. It's just they used prayer instead of insulin, right? And so that's the only difference. So they, instead of administering insulin, they prayed. The boy's father, who was not a Christian Science, won damages, a damages award of $1.5 million. And this was the first time that had ever happened. So it sort of set this precedent, right? It's a tricky legal issue because on the one hand, it is religious freedom. And on the other hand, it also is this idea of kind of what we could call child abuse. So does anybody want to defend the mom and say that the mom should have won? Drissa says no. That's what, yeah, it's a harder side to defend. I think most of us would agree that she made a mistake, to put it lightly, right? It was her fault that her child died, right? And so she should not win this case. Does anybody want to defend the mom? So actually, I have this quote here from a law professor. He kind of defends the mom. I want to see if you guys can understand this. I'll read you the whole context. So even though the court favored the dad, Stephen L. Carter, Yale law professor, he pointed out that according to a recent Gallup poll, 4 out of 5 Americans believe that prayer can cure disease. Nearly half said they have been healed by prayer themselves, and he concluded sardonically, which you can look up if you don't know that word. Sardonically, by refusing to intervene in this case, the Supreme Court has reinforced a societal message that has grown depressingly common. It is perfectly okay to believe in the power of prayer, so long as one does not believe in it so sincerely that one actually expects it to work. So what is he saying? What is Carter saying in this quote? He's being kind of sarcastic, right? That's basically what sardonic means. He's being sarcastic here, and he's kind of criticizing the court decision, right? So what is his critique here? Can anybody spell this out for us? He's effectively trying to argue in defense of the mom. Maybe I'll break this down for you. So, one scenario is that here's what the Supreme Court is saying. Supreme Court says, on the one hand, if you believe in science, not to fully rely on it. Yeah, that's basically what the court is saying, right? If you want to fully rely on prayer, then we're going to intervene, right? Then it's against the law. If you believe in science and religion, then it's okay. Oh yeah, you're good, Colin. But if you only, I'm going to put it in all caps, only believe in religion and not in science, then it's illegal. Right? But is this truly freedom of religion? It's basically saying you have to believe in science, right? And if religion and science are in conflict, then you have to believe in science anyway. Do you guys see? Do you understand this critique? So even though on the face of it, this looks like a very simple case of child abuse or neglect, maybe we could call it, it's actually kind of complicated, isn't it? Right? And I'm not trying to convince you that one side is right and the other one's wrong. I guess all I want to point out is that this is a difficult case. It's more difficult than maybe it looks initially. And again, we're assuming that the mom loves the baby and thinks this is what is best for the baby, right? And so it's not that she's denying care, it's a type of care that most of us would not normally recognize, right? Other thoughts on this? Is that pretty clear? Questions before we move on? Okay, well, the reason I wanted to spend so much time on this, and we sort of jumped around, but this we could say is another example of a cultural barrier. Maybe it's a religious barrier, whatever, but looking at the body, looking at health, looking at disease differently. One reason I want to spend so much time on this is because this, of course, is very important for our Lee family, right? Why are these conversations important for the Lees? Why are these laws and conversations important for the Lee family? What is the cultural barrier, we could say, that's going on with the Lee family?
I think they believe in the spirit, and they think that the child disease is caused by a spirit. Exactly. And not by medical,
Yeah. So just like Joseph said, the family thinks the disease is caused by a spirit. What do the doctors say? What's the other side of the cultural barrier?
The doctor, they know, that thing, it is epilepsy and it can be cured medically.
Good. So epilepsy versus spirits. Exactly, right? And so the Lee family is put in a position where they have to basically choose science, epilepsy, medicine, even though their culture is more on the spirit side, right? Which is fine most of the time, but when it comes to the care for this child, then all of a sudden we really have to make some decisions, right? So here's my question for you. Maybe I'll give you some pages and we can open our books and start talking about stuff. So this is chapter 7. Chapter 7, it's page 78 to 90 something, 92, I think. Yeah, 92. So this is the section I want to discuss today. We can get to the next stuff too if there's time for it. But basically, what happens, as you can tell, this chapter is called Government Property, which means Leah was taken away by Child Protective Services, right? And so my question for you is, was this the right thing to do? There are all other questions we could ask. For example, why, right? Why was she taken away? And as you can see, she was taken away for almost a whole year. Was this the right thing to do? What was she like when she came home? And then also, what are some other options? So in answering this question, that's the big question is, was this the right thing to do? We have to think about why did it happen? Where was the miscommunication? What could have been done differently, right? And so then we can kind of come back to this main question. But the main question is, should Child Protective Services have taken Leah away? That is our question. So questions for me before we break out into groups later if you're writing about it. So what do you guys think? Should Child Protective Services have taken Leah away? Brendan, do you have an opinion? You've been ruminating. You think so? Yeah. Why do you think so?
I mean, yeah, the parents have the right to practice their own cultural or religious stuff, whatever. But obviously, I wasn't really working with seizures and all that. The medicine, the hospital has to be backed up by research and science. There's no way to stick to it.
Okay, that's a pretty straightforward answer. So you guys probably couldn't hear him. So what Brendan is saying is, okay, we do have these two cultures, and the family is entitled to their religious freedom and that sort of stuff, cultural freedom. But at the same time, I'll even write the name of the medicine. Tegretol is what it's called. Tegretol, and I know there are a lot of details to follow here, but this is worth paying attention to, is supported by research and science, and so that makes it more valuable, right? And of course, this is what our society is founded on. We were talking about vaccine hesitancy, right? I could say it's my cultural belief that I don't want to get the vaccine, but like we said, I would not be able to travel internationally, and I might not even be allowed to come to this campus if I said that. So when we have research that backs up these vaccines, they've been thoroughly researched, and even though it might feel like they're rushed, and that's what some people say as to why they are hesitant, the reality is they're not rushed, right? They've been thoroughly researched and thoroughly backed up. We don't know what will happen 10 years from now. We don't know how long these vaccines will last. There are a lot of question marks. That's true. But that's the nature of the situation we're in, right? Because it is a new vaccine, there are a lot of things we don't know. And frankly, they didn't know what would happen to Leah when they gave her this Tegretol. What it's supposed to do, we talked about this in one of our groups, is prevent seizures, right? So, and of course, that's the problem with epilepsy. The prediction is that this will prevent seizures in her. And I think that is true. That was the case. But there actually were some side effects. Did you guys pick up on this? What happened to Leah when she take Tegretol? Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, on page 88. So if you got this far, you will have seen it on page 88. So D. Cordis is the person taking care of her. She says Tegretol and phenobarbital were the worst combination for Leah. The worst. When she took them, she was drunk. She couldn't navigate or walk. I think that's why her parents wouldn't give them to her. Then she'd have a seizure and everyone would get mad at them. So, maybe this is a predictable side effect. I think phenobarbital, is that what it's called? Yeah, phenobarbital. I feel like is barbital barbiturate? Wouldn't that be something that's I don't know. I'm not an expert on these sort of pharmaceutical sciences, but we have somebody saying there were these side effects, even though they prevent Leah from getting seizures. On the other hand, they also introduced this whole host of other issues. And so if the parents didn't fully understand, let's say, the logic behind the seizure medicine, and then they saw all these side effects, they probably thought, well, we're giving her too much. Maybe if we just give her a little bit, she won't act like she's drunk when she takes her medicine, right? So when we engage the details of the case, it gets a little more understandable, but I think most of us will still agree with what Brendan was saying, right? Is that her health was being threatened and she needed somebody who could really take care of her, right? Okay, other thoughts? Does anybody want to say no? Does anyone want to argue that CPS should not have taken away Leah? Who wants to give the counter take? And there's plenty to use here to make a counter argument. So for example, what could they have done instead of taking her away? If the parent,
I mean, they could just,
go ahead, Joseph.
yeah, I think they could just like maybe have like a nurse going there all the time to give her the medication instead of just taking her away.
That's a pretty good solution, isn't it? And again, what it forces us to think about is, are the parents unable or unwilling to give the medicine? And this is something we talked about in one of our groups, right? And it's a little bit of both. On the one hand, they're unwilling because they see their daughter experiencing these side effects and they think, you know what, this is too much medicine. It's changing her face. It's changing the way she acts. We don't want to give her all this medicine because it looks like it's hurting her, right? So on the one hand, they're unwilling. On the other hand, they're also unable. Why are they unable? Can they read English? No, they cannot, right? So on the other hand, they're also just unable to read the instructions, unable to follow the directions. And so, like Drissa was saying, why don't they get somebody to come to the house and help them? Yeah, they can't read Hmong either. They can't read any language. They can't read numbers, right? Most people can read numbers no matter what country you're in. You can read I guess they're called Arabic numerals, right? But these folks cannot even read numbers. So if they got to like measure something out, not going to work. So a big part of the problem is they're unable. And so like Drissa was saying a moment ago, maybe they could get somebody to do it for them. And then they wouldn't have to take Leah away. Why is how should I phrase this? What are the problems involved with taking Leah away from her parents? For example, how old was she? Do you guys know when Leah was born? I think it said it actually in that official document. Yeah, so she was born in 1982. If she was taken away in 1985, she was 3 years old. Right? Why is this a problem to take a 3-year-old away from her family? I think you guys intuitively know this, but I think it's important to bring this to the
It
table.
can cause trauma to her.
Say it again.
That can cause some trauma to her.
It can cause
Can
trauma.
be traumatized.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at what happened, like on page 86, she's crying, she's curled up in the bathtub, she's confused, she's sad. She would pound at the door like a caged animal, say na na na. Now I know means daddy in Hmong. She's actually saying nyam, nya, which means mother. So she's trying to get her mom. um, she was scared and she's a little baby and she missed her mom, right? And so even though, again, when we read this complaint, it's like, okay, well, she needs her medicine. She's not getting her medicine. Let's take her away, put her in the care of someone who can give her medicine. To take her away from her mother is also ignoring a very important aspect of what it means to be well, don't you think? Right? To have care, to have love for a child who's this little. I think to ignore that detail is ignoring actually a very big detail, right? And so as we think about this sort of larger picture of medicine, it is more than just the substances that are in her blood that will make her well, right? Um, okay, maybe that's enough of that. Are there other things we want to talk about? Oh yeah, the witch medicine too. I was talking about the Tegretol and how that was bad for her. And then finally they decide to give a different medicine. This is another thing that they could do differently, is the medicine that they had prescribed. I'm going to read from page 91 now. The medicine they had prescribed was this complicated procedure of different pills that they had to combine. And now on page 91, pediatric depakine. So this is the new medicine, depakine. Pediatric depakine is a liquid that tastes pleasantly of cherries and is far easier to administer than the complicated combinations of bitter ground up pills Leah had previously been taking. And so this nurse person, Janine, is that her name? Yeah, Janine, showed Foa, that's the mom, how to use a plastic syringe to squirt the liquid into Leah's mouth, placing a piece of masking tape at the 8 cc mark because Foa couldn't read numbers. Foa practiced with water until she was proficient, then graduated to depakine. So they found a solution. It took a little bit of effort, right? Maybe a little bit of time, but this is a special situation. You have a very sick daughter. You have two different cultures. You have people who don't know English. It's going to take a little more time. And so, again, she was taken away for almost an entire year when she was a very young child. And just like Drissa was saying, this was certainly a difficult experience for her and for her parents. And so finally, by the end of the chapter, page 92, they say how Mr. and Mrs. Lee are commended for their cooperation and positive efforts in working with the undersigned and blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't come down to them being, bad parents or being abusive. I think it's unfair to characterize them this way. It really comes down to this weird collision of cultures, misunderstanding, cultural barrier, language barrier, which there were ways to get over, right? It took time, it took effort, it took creativity. Maybe let's prescribe this medicine instead of that medicine. Maybe let's get somebody to help show them how to give the medicine rather than just give them the English language instructions and hope for the best. And so as a result, Leah was finally able to go home. So that's the government property chapter. Any questions about this? So we've got 5 minutes. Maybe we can start talking about a few other things. What we were technically supposed to read for today was up until page 153. So obviously we're not going to cover all of this. And spoiler alert, maybe I'll tell you this and it'll make you interested in reading some more. There's a chapter 11, that's the chapter I asked you to read up to today. It's called The Big One. What do you think the big one is talking about? What could the big one be referring to? Big seizure. Yeah. So it comes anyway, right? Spoiler alert. It comes anyway, even though the parents do give her the medicine and even though they do follow the instructions, she gets sick anyway. So it makes you look back at this period and wonder if she has the seizure anyway, right? Should we really be blaming the parents for their misunderstanding? Maybe you can tell I have my own opinion about this, and I don't mean to say that there is one right or wrong answer to this question. It's a very difficult situation, but I do think creativity is the key, right? Looking for modes of communication and not acting unilaterally, right? I think unilateral orders and expectance of compliance were really the problem here. I have this kind of goofy slide with the chicken, which maybe we could go over this a little just a little bit. When we think about, okay, what is a better solution? How do you have communication in this cultural barrier, across this cultural barrier? There is a way, right? You just have to speak the other person's language, right? You have to use symbols from the other person's culture. And so we're kind of turning back now, but on page 36 and 37, you have this guy named Conquer Good. He's an anthropologist. He was hanging out with the Hmong people in the camps, and there were problems with, um, let me see if I can find it. There were problems with pollution. There were problems with rabies. Maybe I'll just talk about the rabies one. So Conquer Good's first challenge came with an outbreak of rabies among camp dogs. And so again, we have this biological issue. Rabies is spreading around. We need to communicate across this cultural barrier and tell people that rabies is dangerous. So what did he do? He decided on a rabies parade, a procession led by three important characters from Hmong folk tales: a tiger, a chicken, and a duck, right? One of those evil spirits dressed in homemade costumes. The cast, like its audience, were 100% Hmong. And as the parade snaked through camp, the tiger danced and played the keej. The duck sang and banged the drum. The chicken chose for its crucial role because of its traditional powers of augury, explained the etiology of rabies through bullhorn. So you had this chicken going through the town explaining what rabies is, right? And explaining how it works. The next morning, the vaccination stations were so besieged by dogs, dogs carried in their owners' arms, dogs dragged on rope leashes, dogs rolled on two-wheel push carts, that the health workers could hardly inoculate them fast enough. Conquer Good's next production, the sanitation campaign, was led by Mother Clean and the Garbage Troll, and they sang songs about latrine use and refuse disposal. So I think you get the point, right? It's not to say that there's no room for conversation here. It's just you have to know how to speak to each other on each other's terms. And the fact that this was a vaccine campaign, it makes me think, like, how do we speak to the vaccine hesitant people in America, right? Especially the ones who are maybe not holding on to religious beliefs, but are just sort of scared of the unknown and scared of this new drug. That's basically what that This American Life episode I sent you is about. They're using a guy from Fox News to talk to kind of the, let's just say, Trump supporter folks who tend to maybe be a little less likely to get this vaccine. It's a group that voted for Trump and that is self-identified as vaccine hesitant. They got kind of the Fox News equivalent of the chicken to come out and try to speak with them and basically say, here's why you should get it done. And I haven't finished listening to the episode. I listened to it on the walk to work this morning, or walk to school this morning. So we'll see if it works. I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I feel like it's much easier to sign your dog up for the rabies shot rather than sign yourself up. But we'll see. Maybe. We all have to be brave here. So, okay. So that's enough. This is just my last little piece to say there are ways to speak across these cultural barriers. You just have to try, right? You have to be creative, and to expect somebody to comply with your instructions is perhaps not the only way to do it. Okay, so it is 2:50, or no, 2:49. It's almost 2:50, so we're basically out of time. Any last thoughts or questions before we call it a day? How's that sound?